All right, welcome Afro UPRIS club members. This evening on April 18th, we are hearing from one of our members as well as guest speakers, Regina Celestin-Williams. And Regina, if you didn't already read it in the chat, is the executive director of SV at Home. And she has graciously accepted our request to guest speak tonight. And we have some questions. Please prepare your questions as she speaks as well. We'd love for people to ask some more things. So I'll put the questions in the chat. And so the first one, what is the mission and vision of SV at Home?
Hi, everyone. Good to see folks tonight. So the mission of SV at Home is to drive the creation of affordable housing for a more vibrant and equitable Silicon Valley. And the vision is a diverse and equitable Silicon Valley where everyone has access to safe, stable, and affordable home. From those experiencing homelessness to those working for our leading employers, all families deserve to have housing choice and opportunity to live near well-paying jobs, strong educational facilities, childcare, medical care, healthy food options, and neighborhood amenities. So that's what we're always working towards. We have a set of values around believing that housing is a human right, that diversity makes us stronger. We also believe that centering equity and inclusion in our work is key to the success of that work, that housing policy is not just about housing, and that working together in partnership is more impactful. So those are sort of like the values that we hold in the work that we do.
Wonderful, thank you. And the next question, if people want to learn more about the services or the resources, how can people learn those from SV at Home?
So more resources in terms of what we have to offer. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so, like resources that you can offer, that you can direct folks to, or services that you offer or that you can direct folks to in terms of low-income housing or affordable housing.
Yes, so we actually have something on our website called a resource hub. We're very much a nonprofit focused on affordable housing policy, public policy, and advocacy. So we don't provide direct service. That means that, we're in spaces to really change how we, as a collective community, address housing crisis and challenges in our region. And we cover Santa Clara County, but we're not sort of on the end of like providing housing to folks who need housing or connecting individuals in the community to resources. We actually work with a lot of nonprofit partners. We work with a lot of sort of staff from the city and the county to move this work. So really change policies around housing and how much we're building and how much we're preserving and how we're holding tenants so that they're not being displaced from this area, but we don't actually provide like direct services to people who might be at risk of losing their housing. So a lot of our resources are available on our website. Again, we have something called a resource hub, but it's really about like best practices when it comes to policies for advancing housing strategies and learning more about what's going on in your community when it comes to housing policy. So whether you live in Palo Alto or Gilroy or Morgan Hill and anywhere in between, we're trying to keep people in the loop and up to date so that if they want to come out and become housing advocates, they can act and know how to support making their communities more of places where everyone can live and thrive. So those are the kind of resources we have. We also are a membership organization, which means that a lot of folks who provide services or who are housing owners and operators are a part of our membership base, and we're happy to make connections with folks who may have the resources that people are looking for. So that's another thing that we can do, is like bring people together and connect people with other folks in our network.
Okay, thank you for all that clarification. And I guess you kind of answered this next question, which is like, what is SV at Home doing for affordable housing? And is there any, I guess, are there any goals in helping connect the community to get housed in this affordable housing units within San Jose or within the county?
Say that again. What? I'm sorry. You said, how do we play a role in that?
Yeah, like, are there, sorry, let me type in the next question. The third question that we came up with was, what are you doing for affordable housing? I think in terms of policy, was this question? Yeah.
Yeah, so we do a lot. What our staff spends a lot of time doing is working with either coalitions of other, housing organizations and folks who are invested in seeing the area become one where there's enough housing for everyone and everyone is stably housed. So we'll work in coalition to be involved in some of the decision-making processes around the county. Some good examples are, we work with some partners in Palo Alto so that the city of Palo Alto could adopt more renter protections. And that was a huge highlight of the work that we did last year and the year before last. We've also been a part of the COPA Coalition, the Community Opportunity to Purchase Act in San Jose, where a lot of community organizations are looking to enact a policy in San Jose that will allow tenants to have some sort of notice when their buildings that they're renting from are being put up for sale on the market. We've been a part of discussions around some of the larger master plan developments, like the ones that Google's doing in Mountain View and Sunnyvale and San Jose, where we are in discussions directly with Google to push for a bigger portion of the housing they're looking to build to be affordable, looking for them to build more housing in general. And then we also interact with the cities in those master plans, because they're going to be approving them, and we share data and resources about why there should be more affordable housing required of partners like Google, and why there should be zoning allowing more higher density housing in these sort of opportunity areas for master development. So that's the kind of work that we do. We also meet with elected officials to try to kind of advocate for certain positions when it comes to housing, to be a resource to them. A lot of folks get elected and they may have an issue area and it may not be housing. So if they're going to be voting on housing issues, they want to understand better what everything means and how to approach it. So we do a lot of education as well. We do education in the general public, for the general public, when projects are getting proposed and there's folks coming out saying, no, don't build this, and they don't really understand what interim housing might be or what, permanent supportive housing is. We try to educate, and we also write letters of support to elected officials. I think for this group, it's important to know that we do have a C4, and so we also do quite a bit of work supporting legislation at the state, where we're always, in conversations about proposed legislation, how we can support it. We write letters of support. We try to think about how legislation can be better shaped so that it better serves Santa Clara County. And we're also in the midst of right now supporting a huge initiative that is looking to pass bonds throughout the state, which is funding, like bond measures, which is funding for more affordable housing throughout the state. And then coupled with that is an initiative to pass a bond measure in the Bay Area, the 9-county Bay Area. And so we're leading on that initiative with our partners down here in Santa Clara County, working partnerships to try to see if we can galvanize the community, because it's going to be a ballot measure. So we do a lot of things, all the way from, education and working in coalition, all the way to working on ballot measure campaigns and supporting legislation at the state.
Amazing. It sounds like you're doing a lot of work, and I have a quick follow-up question. So with the advocacy, the organizing, galvanizing community, how do people like stay up to date? Like if there's an action, a call to action, that is, how do people get involved with that?
Yeah, I appreciate that. So we try to be really clear on how people can get involved in our work, because our work is about bringing people into the housing movement. So we do have regular communication that goes out. So we love for folks to jump onto our listserv. We have a newsletter that goes out about every other week that you typically has some updates throughout the county and may have a call to action at the end. We also have what's called Policy in Action. It's our monthly webinar series, virtual series, that is on the last Friday of the month, typically. I think in May, it's not gonna be on a Friday, I think. But typically it's the last Friday of the month at the noon hour. And we'll typically have speakers come and talk about what's going on a certain topic and how people can get involved. The one coming up in April, I believe, is around the Moffett Park specific plan. I believe, or no, what is it? Yeah, I think it might be around, no, it's around the North Bay Shore area plan in Mountain View. So trying to engage people around the next stage of that approval process and what people can do to support that work. So yeah, we try to always let people know how they can get involved. And oh, I guess this is a good time to mention that May is Affordable Housing Month, and for Santa Clara County, SB at Home is like the hub of Affordable Housing Month. There are lots of events throughout the month, hosted by all kinds of community members and organizations. And we create a calendar to make sure that everyone knows like what's going on and how to get involved and how to show up. And so I'm happy to share a link to that calendar with you all and some of the information about all the things that are going to be going on in May.
Yes, that was my next question. Thank you so much for sharing about that. I think it'd be good if you could share it so we can send it out to the rest of the members. And
okay.
For anyone here who wants to know about the events that are going on to learn more, because I saw the email had a few events that were highlighted, and I'm hoping to make a few. So thank you for that information. And I see Derek Grazzi put a question. Hi, Regina. Oh, actually, Derek, if you want to ask it yourself, you may. I don't mean to talk for you.
Oh, no. Hi, Regina. Actually, she talked a lot about what I had asked. You work with a lot of organizations. How does the average person learn about the website? And could you just talk more about the outreach? You talked about newsletters and so forth. What other things are going on with that, so that people are aware of what's happening?
Yeah, I mean, that's really good, Derek. It sounds like we probably need to think through a strategy to make sure that more people are aware of what's going on. We have, we're trying to grow our social media presence as well. That's a space where we're able to share our events and the things that are going on. We're on LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and Facebook, I think. And we also, sometimes, like our policy and actions, we call them PIAs for short, we will like live stream on Facebook and things like that. So we really try to use that to get more people engaged. We really just work in a group of like coalitions that we move with, and we're in a lot of different coalition spaces, so that allows us to be exposed to broader folks. I think that for the average like neighbor, it may be, less likely for that average neighbor to stumble across us. But we are in a lot of different spaces that overlap, not just housing, because housing policy isn't just housing. So that means we work with a lot of what we call housing adjacent nonprofits and organizations. So we have really, really broad networks of people who we work with and who know us. And so we're able to leverage their exposure to expose us to more people. But that's a good point around like, how does the average person learn about our resources? We'll have to give that more thought.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you for the question, Derek. Does anyone else have any questions? You can just raise your hand or unmute and ask.
I have a question. How is doing housing work in San Jose like different, or actually since you do it with us in Silicon Valley, how is this region like different from like other regions in your experience?
I mean, that's a good question. I would say that right now we're working on a regional bond effort, and you may know that we, in 2016, our community, the county, the voters in the county passed a bond measure called Measure A that has funded a tremendous amount of affordable housing for folks who are experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness. And that's huge, because not a lot of the other counties in the Bay Area had that success. Alameda County successfully passed a bond that year, and so did San Mateo County. But a lot of the counties a little bit north of us, they don't have the same commitment from just the general voting population to really come together to make sure that everyone has a home. And so I think that's a uniqueness that, we kind of, unfortunately, prior to 2016, we weren't doing much around housing people who were getting displaced and living unhoused. But in the last several years, we've really come around and done a serious commitment to this work. And so, there's a lot of challenges that exist for other counties that we may have overcome just because we've been doing this for the past 6 or 7 years. that doesn't make us, we still have quite a ways to go, but we're a little bit ahead of the ball in being able to like continue to pass measures and continue to invest, because we learned a lot of lessons with that first huge bond measure that was Measure A. I also think that, there's a real challenge when you have a county like ours that's not really, how do you say, that's not San Francisco or Oakland. We have a huge major city in San Jose, but the dynamics are very different because of the type of city San Jose is, and just how like sort of dominant in some of the policy shaping, even at the state level, that, San Francisco might be or Oakland might be. And so we're definitely, I think, how do you say, like, we're kind of working independently to really address the challenges around housing, but it's not something we can solve independently. And so, we're at the point where we recognize that there has to be a regional effort, there has to be a statewide effort to allow other areas all throughout the state to access bonds as well. And so there's so many differences, and some of it is political, some of it is historical in terms of how the South Bay is viewed. But I think one of the other things is that the people in the unique, I think, position for someone like you all, Afro UPRIS, is that the people in a county like Santa Clara County and a city like San Jose are really thinking about, how can we do this? How can we, transform our community and house everyone? But our elected officials don't reflect those values. They're a little bit more conservative, typically. And so really being able to engage the electorate and the voters is a huge opportunity, so that our values are better reflected in the elected officials, in the councils. And I think that's a huge opportunity for Afro UPRIS. And some counties in the north, they may not be close to where we are, but I think we really have a chance to have leadership that reflects our values.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Anybody else have a question? Okay. Well, if that's it, and then Elizabeth, I saw you put another question, but
Yeah,
let me know
I want
you already
I want
answered
to
it.
give people a chance to ask another question, but if not, I can ask it if no one else wants to go.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I was wondering, is SB at Home working on any specific housing policies related to racial equity?
Housing specific policies. I mean, the way I feel is that our work is absolutely about like dismantling the, existing, the legacy of racism that's in, this existing zoning and land use regulation. And so to some extent, a lot of our work and the framing of our work is around like, liberating marginalized populations and people of color. It's challenging to like really focus on anything that's racial specific. There's one coalition that I'm a part of called the Black Hat, which is the Black Housing think an action task force. I always forget what the A stands for, but it's a initiative that came out of the Bay Area, and it's out of a group, I think, that's centered in Oakland, that really realized they're a health equity group, and they realized that that health outcomes for Black people is really determined and affected by access to affordable and stable housing. And so they created this initiative last year, or maybe it was created in 21, to really focus on raising a large fund, creating a large fund that was funded by the state to address Black folks' access to housing in the Bay Area. And so I'm a part of that task force. So that's one effort that I'm happy to share more information about, so that people, if they want to read up on it or get connected to the folks who are lead it, they're called BARHI, which is like Bay Area something with health equity and inequity initiative or something like that. But they're amazing, and the work they're doing is growing. It recently transformed into a statewide initiative. The challenge that they ran into was that they couldn't find a champion in the state legislature that was Black. And that's because we didn't have like any Black elected officials who could carry it in the Bay Area. So they had to go to a statewide initiative, because a lot of our state legislators are in Southern California. So, you know, there's just so much inequity, so many challenges. And they're really, really clever folks that are learning this space, similar to me, this policy space, and really making some significant progress. So I'm happy to share information about that initiative. But, you know, I see the COPA work, I see community ownership, and preservation work, anti-displacement work, all as, you know, racialized work, because everything we're up against is steeped in so much racism, historically and today.
Yeah, Regina, just to follow up on what you were just saying about the Black Hat, I'm somewhat familiar with them. They tried to, you know, get $500 million to support Black housing and so forth, mostly centered in, I guess, Oakland, San Francisco area, not necessarily in the South Bay, as I understand it. But it didn't go through, as you mentioned. That they tried to get some legislators, couldn't find a champion. Are they going to try to go at it again sometime in the future?
Yeah, so I'm on the task force, and I mean, I am on the task force. Most of the folks involved are in Oakland and San Francisco, but it would have covered Santa Clara County. So, and they asked for some more connections down here in Santa Clara County and things like that, to folks who wanted to be involved in that initiative. So the plan, I think right now, the task force is really trying to consider, like, what is its strategy? Should the strategy be to ask for money from the state? Is that likely in this, you know, year of a projected shortfall or whatever is happening? Or should they, you know, look to something else, like creation of, you know, some kind of legislation that creates, you know, some requirement for the state to monitor, you know, how much of its housing resources are going to Black developers, serving Black people, going to, you know, Black lenders, that sort of thing. Should they, they're just trying to figure out what's the best strategy. And they have a few options. I don't remember all of them off the top of my head. One of them, you know, one of the strategic decisions was to go statewide. But they're really trying to think about, is this the year to ask for, you know, if we go statewide, 500 million is nothing. So, you know, is this the year to ask for a pot of money? Or is it the year to push for some other kind of like legislation or something that, you know, supports the work that they're trying to do that they can build on in future years. So yeah, that's where they are.
Okay, all right, thank you. One other quick question. Where do you see SV at Home in 5 years in terms of the work being done?
Oh, that's a good question. Wow, I just realized I didn't think that far out. I mean, I feel like for me, some of the goals that I have are about expanding, you know, who considers themselves in the housing movement, you know, like really expanding what our partners look like, what kind of organizations we're working with on the ground. And so I see us kind of better reflecting the folks we're trying to serve in terms of like access to housing and housing stability, because the space is a very, you know, white space right now in terms of the housing industry space, the housing policy space. I think that, you know, this bond measure, this regional bond, is an initiative that's going to hopefully go to the ballot in 2024. So that's going to be a lot of our work in this next year and a half, is really bringing the goal is at least $10 billion for the 9-county Bay Area. So that means 2.2 billion for Santa Clara County. And so that's a lot of dollars to really be able to tackle this housing crisis. And it's not just building new units, it's also preservation. So investing in the affordable housing stock we have. It's also tenant protections, trying to stabilize folks from being displaced. So that's really impactful. And we're putting a lot of time and effort in that. And I know that's just this next couple of years, but that's huge if we are able to do that. I think the next goal of mine is really to build up community-based organizations that are involved in development, because, you know, in Oakland, you may have the Unity Council, which is based in the Fruitvale and serving Black and Brown folks. You have Chinatown CDC in San Francisco, and Mission Economic Development Corporation in the Mission in San Francisco. You have Black and Brown developers, neighborhood-based, community-based, serving their communities, and we don't have anything like that in San Jose. And right now, or in Santa Clara County, and right now, when we go to like the city and we say you should invest in a community-based strategy, they say, well, who's going to do this? There's no developers who have the skills to do this. So why should we invest in a community-based strategy if there's no capacity? And so, and all we have is folks who come from other parts of the city, the region or the state who develop. We don't have like folks who focus on their neighborhood, their folks. And so a lot of what I'm trying to do is invest in that infrastructure to support like emerging developers that are community-based, neighborhood-based, that are like, you know, I know, you know, all the churches in this area. I know all of the institutions. I know most of the people who've lived in this community, and I want to build up this community for those folks so that they're not displaced, so that they can reap the benefits of like, you know, whatever Silicon Valley is, this economic engine that's Silicon Valley. And so that's probably like the 5-year vision. That's going to take some time to really have those kind of organizations grow up and then get development under their belt and really have some successes, because the real estate development timeline is pretty long.
All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, Derek, for those very helpful questions. I think it helps us all kind of envision what is going to be happening for the community, specifically around the policy work, the advocacy, and the investment in affordable housing and how it can benefit the Black community. And I think that's really important for us to kind of know that timeline, that strategy, and how we can assist. So if anyone has any questions, raise your hand now. And thank you so much, Regina, for answering our questions. We look very much forward to collaborating with SV at Home. We've talked a lot about it as Afro UPRIS, like how can we, you know, put people into connection with you all, but also how can we help in those movements, initiatives? What can we do in terms of policy? And just off the top of my head, I feel like in terms of just getting people out there for supporting these bond measures in terms of investment as much as possible, you know, getting people registered to vote. Those are things that I think we should hear more about so we can help when the time comes, for sure. And we can plan now for those types of turnouts, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's really important.
That's
thank
great.
you so much. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to see everybody.
All right, thank you,
Well,
Regina.
you can stay if you'd like. We are going to have our regular club meeting now. So I'm going to stop the recording.